Thanks for tuning in to another day of the online summit series, Yoga Beyond Exercise, conversations to heal and lead us into the new paradigm of peace, harmony, and prosperity. My next guest is Molly Dahl. Molly's been teaching for over 30 years, 18 of those in a high school classroom in both the public and private sectors. Her favorite thing to teach is anything that helps people feel better, a sense of purpose, and empowered to live their fullest life. Welcome, Molly Dahl, to the online summit series, Yoga Beyond Exercise.
Thanks, Julie. It's so good to see you. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. I know Molly from our yoga and Buddhist days. We studied together and practiced together and laughed together and cried together on many occasions. And what she's doing in the world right now as a teacher and a leader is just really, really inspiring and really speaks to the intention for this summit of healing and leading us into the new paradigm of peace, harmony, and prosperity. So, Molly, maybe you could share with the audience like who you are and what you do with your time, which I think is amazing.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing too. It's really great to be a part of this. And I love your three words, the peace, prosperity, and was it harmony?
Harmony, yep.
Harmony. Yeah. I don't sing at all, but harmony is one of my favorite words. And one of my favorite things about music is listening to voices that sing harmony. It's very, very soothing. And I think we don't give enough, we don't pay enough attention to this word harmony. We really don't. And so as you're listening to this talk, as Julie and I share some back and forth and some great ideas, please allow yourself to resonate with this word harmony and what it does when you hear harmonious sounds. It resonates all through the body and helps you tune into the peace that is there, ultimately the peace that is the underlying foundation of who you are. So my work in the world, I was a high school Spanish teacher for 15 years, and I left the classroom in 2014, so quite a while ago now. And I have been working in the education leadership field since then. My work that led me out of my classroom and into more of the educational leadership was through my studies in positive psychology. And I ended up writing its curriculum, but it's more than curriculum as we think of it in the sense of a school book. It's curriculum on how to live a life of thriving and flourishing. And the book that I wrote is called Youth Positive. And it came kind of as a download, which I always love when you get the downloads, right? Because you know that it's not yours. There's some greater purpose behind what it is that you're doing. And so the Youth Positive came right when I was at the beginning of my positive psychology year-long certification course as a way to help students understand the self, to become self-aware. And what I thought was the most exciting part to me as the teacher when I was creating the program is that I'm a Spanish teacher. I teach language. Our whole life is built on language. It's what we have to identify the self. It's what we have to narrate our consciousness into being is language and vocabulary. So being able to use language, which we all use, we all have, it's an agreed upon structure so that we can have harmony in the world that we live in, and to be able to use the language as a foundation for diving into the self, who you are, what are your ideas, how do you see the world, how do you communicate with each other, what things do you communicate about, what makes you you, what makes you unique. And so to be able to sneak in a little bit more depth to personal exploration in my Spanish classes through Youth Positive and through positive psychology It was so fun. It was so fun. It was my last 2 years in the classroom, and I saw the changes in my students that I had hoped to see my whole 15 years there, just by giving them opportunity to explore. Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Why are you hanging out with the people you're hanging out with? What do you hope to get? What do you hope to give? Um, and so my work there with kids, I loved it. I really loved it. Um, I heard one time along my many different adventures of life, somebody said, "Make sure whatever you do, make sure that you love your Monday mornings."
Mm.
And that landed really hard on me. Probably because at that time I was doing a job I didn't love. And so as an educator, I cultivated a life that I loved my Monday mornings. I loved them. I loved my students. I loved being with them. I loved the connection and seeing them flourish. And I'll just tell you this, Julie, the coolest thing is when as an educator, a teacher, you get a note from one of your students and they tell you the difference that you made in their life. And I've been doing a little positive experiment on Facebook. We ended on Thanksgiving, and I got one of the most beautiful notes from a former student. She messaged me on Facebook and explained what a difference my class made for her, because I encouraged my students to live the grand adventure of life, to not be afraid of it. And so, you never know. You kind of know, but you never know until you get one of those notes, and then it just cracks your heart wide open, and these tears of gratitude flow freely. And that's for me, and I think for most of us, because life is relationship. I think that when we are fortunate enough to know the positive impact that we've had on another person, that's when it all matters. That's when it all matters. Yeah. So that's the work I do now, is with the teachers and the administrators,
Oh.
helping them to be self-aware, helping them to find their own unique genius, so that as they're in the field of education, they can make it through the chaos. They're not tapped out by October, especially with what's going on now, because educators are some of the most important people in the world. And if we don't have educators who have tools to overcome the challenges, if the educators themselves cannot be emotionally resilient, the kids never will be. Because in the classroom, what you model is what you get. And if a teacher cannot model emotional resilience, then those kids will never have the opportunity to see it in practice and have an example of what it looks like to be emotionally resilient. So that's the water I swim in now.
So you are doing training. So what does a training look like? What are you teaching the the facilitators? Because I think this is where we're heading in our world. This is the new paradigm part of the summit. And I really feel like you're leading the way to kind of, really do these trainings to help these facilitators and these educators, because it's helping them, and then they're, like you said, modeling it for the students and incorporating it into their lives so that they are able to learn, how to be, I don't know, a more whole and complete human. Actually, that's what
Yeah.
I was getting from reading Youth Positive and the curriculum that I know that you're sharing. So maybe you could share that with the audience so that because I found it awesome, and I found like it was so helpful to me in my life just listening
Oh,
to you.
oh, thanks, Julie.
I really did.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. That's a good question. And it's another one of the fun parts. There's so many parts of education that are so fun and so good that easily get clouded over because just the overwhelming nature of what it is. And so what I'm sharing, um, with educators, and so it is for educators and teachers. But the great part about it, Julie and I talked a little bit about this before we started the recording session, is that it works, the work that I do with Youth Positive, understanding yourself, looking at how you perceive the world, how you connect into the world, what you bring to the world. It works with students, it works with teachers, it works with administrators, it works with, you know, even governmental layers of educators in the legislative parts, because it addresses each person individually. And so as I'm proceeding with my work with adults, which is a whole new world, it's so different than working with kids. I'm also moving out into leadership because the offering is the core of every person. It's self-awareness. It's mindful self-awareness, looking inside. And what are we aware of as we look at self-awareness, right? Because we hear it a lot these days. Oh, self-awareness, mindfulness, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but mindful of what? Self-aware of what? Right? Because we're all self-aware. You know, I have a body, I'm a female, I'm a girl, my name is Molly. That's how I show up on the planet. So we're all self-aware. We all know how tall we are at this time of the year. We all know how much we weigh, right? We're in that holiday season. And so we are self-aware. But when we look deeper into self-awareness that transforms the way that you show up day after day, transforms your presence in relationships, that self-awareness is how you perceive the world. What is your worldview? What are your repeated emotional patterns that drive your behavior? The self-awareness of who am I? You know, and this question has been around as long as a human being has ever been on the planet, right? Who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? The big existentials. Yes. And who am I as I show up in relationship to my husband when he brings me a cup of coffee or when he doesn't and I expect him to, right? Because those are the big moments when things don't go our way. That's when we need self-awareness. Because when things are happy, when things are good, we don't care. We don't care about myself. I don't care about getting what I want and what I need when I'm happy because I already have it. And so, again, back to kind of the focus of the work that I do, but it's so much bigger is, and this is I just wrote another book and it's an editorial review right now. So all fingers crossed and it comes out January or February. And it's called The Art of Emotional Resilience. And then there's a great big huge long subtitle that's crazy long but really good, an everyday guidebook to resisting reaction, cultivating compassion, and gracefully self-managing. And so it's the whole big picture of what are emotions on a mental kind of you don't really think when you have big, strong, negative emotions. So we can't really say a cognitive level, but more of emotional mind level and the biological level, what goes on in your body biologically when you have strong emotions, and then how those emotions drive our behaviors. And those repeated behavior patterns that are driven by strong emotions, that's your gold. That is your gold. And you're the alchemist, right? That pattern, that behavior. And say, for example, we're going to use anger because it's the big doozy, right? And we've all been angry. It might not be our go-to. We might, if we have strong emotions, we might hide or withdraw or stonewall. But we're all familiar with anger. We've all been angry at one point or another. It is the most destructive of the emotions. And if, for example, a person, their negative repeated behavior is anger, and they're angry, I don't know how many times, but let's say you have an angry episode maybe 4 or 5 times a week. All right. this is really a really great place to become mindfully aware of, oh, I'm angry this often per week. What is this doing to me? What is it doing to my relationships? And then you'll go back and see yourself when you get to the point where you're self-aware and you think, oh yeah, I'm angry a lot. And then you'll begin to think, why? Those two right there, this is my behavior. This is what's motivating me. Those are gold mine to help you understand unmet needs. Most often, unmet needs. Something within you, somewhere along the whole path of your lifetime, however many years old you are, I turned 50 this year, so 50 years worth of living, is something that got stuck somewhere along the way. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel appreciated. I grew up in a household where there were 6 kids in the dollhouse, and that's a lot of kids with one mom and a dad who was traveling for work. And then eventually my parents got divorced. And so how many needs of one girl child in a family full of 6 kids, how many of those needs were really met? How many of them were met in ways that were maladapted, as a survival practice, right? And so as you begin to look at these strong emotions and their patterns and why, you're going to uncover some stuff. And some of it's going to be really good. And excuse my language, some of it's going to be really shitty. And it's all in there. And here's the challenge: your mindful self awareness is to love all the parts, to love all the parts, because they're all you. And what we won't look at ourselves, what we stuff back in there, because good girls don't do that, good girls don't speak like that, good girls don't do this, or good boys don't cry, big boys don't cry, whatever it was, that those emotions were not okay, gets stuffed in there. And when it's in the dark, it grows. And so when you have that angry outburst, here's a good way to recognize that it's something old, that it's telling you something about yourself that needs examined, is if your anger doesn't match the situation, right? If someone beeps at you in traffic or cuts you off in traffic and you lose your stuff and you start blaring on the horn or yelling or that, you know, if being beeped at in traffic or cut off in traffic causes you to melt down, that is a really good indication that there's something else behind the scenes. It might be that as a kid, you never got to finish your sentence, or you never got to say what you wanted. You were always cut off. You were always pushed aside. You were always invalidated. And so that overreaction to a small infraction in traffic, oh, that's shining a light on something that says something in there still hurts. Something in there hurts. And that's what it is. And, I don't know how easy it is for people to feel vulnerable or to accept the hurt part of the self. I hate that word vulnerability. But it's a necessary part of becoming emotionally resilient, you know? And so the whole ball of emotions is necessary. It's an absolutely vital component of human existence. And eventually, it is an absolutely vital part of human thriving and flourishing. If we cannot get a hold of our strong emotions, we'll never thrive. We'll never flourish, because thriving and flourishing comes from the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, which is shut down in strong negative emotions, because those strong negative emotions are a survival mechanism. And if you had to stop and think about every little thing that you needed to do in order to survive, you wouldn't survive. Uh, fear's a good one. We'll look at fear for just a second. We all have innate fears. We have fear of incoming objects and we flinch away. And so in traffic, if you're driving along and there's an incoming vehicle coming towards you, your automatic natural response is to veer away from that to save yourself. If your brain did not act on autopilot and you had to think, okay, how fast is that car coming at me? How far away are there? How many different cars are around me now, and how far away are they? Do I have enough time to accelerate and move beyond the incoming car? Or do I need to brake and let the car go by? Or do I need to, all of that thought processing, you're dead. You don't have enough time to calculate. And so your survival brain shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, the planning for the future, the cause and effect, the emotional response, and it just shuts it down so that you survive. And so when we can understand that our emotions, they've gotten us where we are, right? We have survived, and here we are, thank goodness. And now it's time to get a hold of them. Now it's time to get a hold of those ones that hold us back, that do not allow us to make the progress that we're capable of making, that prevent us from living a life of harmony within the self and with others. And so it's a great big emotional ball game, and it's all good. It's all
I find it
good.
so fascinating how all my conversations come back to emotions.
Mhm.
It's, if there was ever a pattern to see is like if I go back and watch all the conversations that everybody listening is going, you're going to see that thread, and it's not like I knew this was going to happen, but it now is showing me that that's where we're at as a species, like accessing the deeper emotional state of being and
Yeah,
truly loving ourselves, taking responsibility, that self responsibility, and stop the blaming others. It's like, even if something has happened, it's like, that's not going to help. I mean, it's an emotion that needs to be felt and gone deeper.
yeah. Yeah. If I can just jump in right there, Julie, um, it's not going to help to blame somebody else. Uh, all that will do is perpetuate the negative cycle. And as scary as it is for many of us, and maybe some of us have gotten this far in our life without ever having to do it because it's so scary to us, we have to take personal responsibility. There's a great story that my professor of positive psychology shares. I studied with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, and he tells this story. It's not his story. It was a different professor at Harvard. And at the beginning of the semester, this Harvard professor of psychology had, one of those great big auditorium classrooms with 300 kids, freshmen. And so it was telling them, okay, now as freshmen, you're in charge. You're in charge of your grades. You're in charge of your study habits. You're in charge of what time you get up in the morning. You're in charge of paying your bills. You're in charge of your food. You're in charge of everyone. That's what it means to be a freshman at university. No, mommy's not there, right? You're in charge. And then he got really close into the seating and he said, no one is coming. No one is coming. You are fully in charge. Got really quiet, right? And one little freshman at the front of the room, he raised his hand and he said, but professor, you came. And then it got even more quiet. And the professor looked around, looked up at all those freshmen, leaned in, and he said, yes. And I came to tell you that no one is coming. Right? And we know, we've had our shoulders to cry on. We've outworn our welcome because all we do is complain about the last negative thing, the breakup, whatever. And people have been there for us. But ultimately, we know that no one is coming. No one's going to save me from my anger. No one's going to save me from my unreasonable fear. No one's going to save me from my anxiety but me. Even if I have a therapist, what's the therapist there to do? To shine the light back on me so I know how to cope. I know how to manage. And so the self-responsibility is a gift. That look, if it's all up to you, then you choose. I mean, you get to do it. You are so empowered because no one is coming. That's a beautiful thing. And it might feel scary because it is you. But guess what? You are all you need. You are all you need. I mean, when we scrape away the whole thing and get down to it, right? Because no one can see the world how you see the world. No one can fix your explosive outbursts of anger but you. And no one can make you mad without your permission. No one can belittle you without your permission. No one can invalidate your existence on the planet unless you allow them to. So it's a good thing when you can stand in your own shoes, when you are a sovereign individual and you know who you are. And are we ever going to know really fully who we are? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we will have these glimpses and know that I'm more than Molly Dahl. Here's a really great way to get a little glimpse of that. Find yourself a really good yoga teacher. And we're going yoga beyond exercise. Find a yoga teacher who teaches you truth about who you are. Yoga means union, and ultimately you are everything, right?
Yeah.
You are light, you are truth, you are love. And if you're in a yoga class and you're unwinding all the knots that twist up the way you think and the way you see the world, and those knots dissolve in a yoga, you will feel bigger than your body. You've felt those experiences, right, Julie? Where you're in your pose and you're whatever, I don't know, you're doing a tree or you're doing a warrior and you know that you're in your body. You can feel your feet on the mat. The teacher's telling you to lift your heart, soften your shoulders, lengthen your spine. And when you lengthen your spine, you feel yourself expand beyond the bounds of your physical body. And so we've had those little brief glimpses. We're out in nature and the wind is speaking to us as we're walking down the forest trail, or we're on the ocean, we're on the shore, we're standing in the surf that comes in, and we feel, yeah, there's so much more to me than meets the eye. And that's what we want. That's what we want to be able to do, is connect with that. Oh, I don't know. Sometimes we call it ephemeral because it's fleeting, but really it's the purity, it's the truth, it's the deepest part of who we are, when we feel bigger than ourselves, when we connect and we hear and we see. That's I don't know. I think that's what gives us the courage to press on in those tricky and trying times where it is kind of dark and we don't really know. we get the glimpse, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it all happened for me. I remember the moment it happened in Brandy and David's yoga class.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
was in Brandy's yoga class too. She was teaching with Anne Marie. There's something magical about those people, isn't there, Julie?
I know, her and David in Trikanasan.
Oh,
All of
nice.
a sudden, and I remember it was like everything in the universe was in like a thought in that instant. And
Yeah.
all I knew after that class was that, and I had no idea they were teaching anything. I was like, whatever they are teaching, I need to learn it. And I remember thinking, I don't care if they're teaching sewing, like I'll learn to sew with them. And that's how it all started in that way.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, right? It was marrying the meditation. Why Tibetan Heart Yoga 1. See?
Oh my gosh.
Marrying
That's
the
all.
meditation with the asana and keeping the
Yeah.
mind focused.
Uh-huh.
Keeping the mind focused and feeling it. Like Brandy had this incredible way of accessing, like with her words. I would access my heart, and then
Yeah.
it just happened naturally.
Mhm.
Which is why that's how I teach yoga to this day.
Nice.
Like,
Nice.
I
Right.
marry the meditation with the asana and,
Yeah.
bring everything in that, we know now. And it's because the emotions are moving the winds through the body in such a profound way when you can access that energy of the emotion with the energy
Ooh,
of the winds together, and then they
yeah. Yeah. And that the energy of the emotion is such a useful thing to consider. And I don't really know that it's ever taught. I don't really know that we're ever taught what our emotions are. We all have them, so you think that we'd be experts, right? But how many people out there can tell us what is an emotion? What happens biologically? What's going on in the mind? Where they come from, right? And so I think a delve into the science of emotions is such a worthwhile endeavor because we have them, and sometimes they absolutely control us. And we behave in these ways that we think, dear God, what's going on with me? But then we have these emotions that just overwhelm us with love, and we behave in these ways that we think, gosh, why can't I be like this all the time? So we have this big emotional up and down, and it's okay, it's normal. Here's one of the things that as I learned this, it absolutely transformed my life. And we all have these moments, but this is one of the big ones. And so this is one of the things that I really share with students. And when I share this with and my favorite group of students on the planet is high school. I absolutely love high school students. I think they're the most amazing people on the planet. And so when I share this with them, all the lights go on. And it is this: your behavior is not your emotion, and your emotion is not your behavior. But because they happen in tandem so quickly, we think it's one whole thing. And it's not. And this is good news, because we can tease that apart and we can begin to understand that I have this emotion, and it is, by its definition, this law of identity on how things exist in the world, by definition. And again, it comes back to our language. An emotion is an internal appraisal, your whole internal system appraising a situation for threat or no threat. And that's what it is. An emotion, the time span, this is so cool. I learned this from Dr. Paul Ekman, Emotions Revealed. I did a 6-week intensive teacher training on cultivating emotional balance. And I took the science of emotion with his daughter, Dr. Eve Ekman. And so this is their work. The emotion in your biology is from a half second to 5 seconds. That is the emotional, biological, neurochemical cascade that happens when your biology is trying to determine, am I going to die or am I going to be okay? Do I need to prepare my whole entire system to fight or to flee? Or am I going to be okay and I can settle down? Okay, so we'll put the longest one, we'll go to that outset of 5 seconds. That's going on in your biology. But how quickly does your behavior flop right out of that biological neurochemical event? Almost immediately, right? You'll have signs. Your body does certain things. If you're angry, oftentimes you clench, your eyebrows go down, you get scary and mean, and you're right. You get really compressed in the heart and you move in toward the object of your anger. These are all biological markers of anger. And when you can start to feel through, again, that mindful self-awareness, when you start to, what are we aware of? I'm aware of, oh, I'm clenching my fists and I'm biting my back teeth, because I grew up where you don't yell, you don't curse, you don't say mean things. And so if anger was coming up, I didn't know how to say I'm angry. I never learned, this is not something you learn how to say I'm angry. That's not the biological response. The biological response is to get big and mean and terrifying to scare away an obstacle who is on your path toward a goal. And our end goal for all of us is happiness. And if there's something in my way, whatever it is, a vehicle cuts me off in traffic, or my child says, Mom, I hate you. Those are both obstacles to me being happy. And so I respond and my behavior is out there. But again, my behavior is not my emotion. My behavior is pushed out because of that emotion. And so I train myself to start paying attention to what's going on in my biology, what's happening with myself physically. And for me, I have learned that I clench my teeth when I'm angry. And so if I feel myself clenching and I know my eyebrows go, I get really serious and mean. I mean looking, right? And so I have trained myself to really pay attention to my jaw and my teeth. I don't often clench my hands, but I do that because a lot of kids clench their fists because they know they can't hit. It's one of the first things we're taught, don't hit. And so they clench because they know they can't, but that's one of the natural in anger. So the fight or flight in anger, our programmed innate biological response is to fight because I am going to remove that obstacle off of my path on my way to happiness. So I'm going to fight. And so that's anger. If we are afraid, you can make your fear face. We move back. We put up a block. Whatever is coming toward us is threatening my survival. And so we move away from that object. My eyes get really big. My nostrils get wide. Oftentimes the lips will draw back so the mouth is open so I can have as much sensory input to determine if that thing, whatever it is a threat to my survival. And in fear, we flee because we're not going to fight because the biology, the chemicals running through, it's a different response in fear and anger. And so when we can learn these basics about our emotions, right? Like I think I was how old was I when I first started learning about emotions? 40, of what really an emotion is, what it does, why we have them. We need them. All emotions are necessary. They are absolutely necessary. In positive psychology, they say it like this: all emotions flow through the same channels. And if we choke off our anger, because we're told that we can't be angry or whatever, we choke off our anger. If we choke off our sadness, and sadness is, we'll talk about that in just a second. If we choke that off, we're also choking off all of the same channels for joy and gratitude, for awe and wonder, for hope, for a sense of humble pride. And so when we think that our emotions are bad and we can't have them, we're doing a huge disservice to ourselves because our brain doesn't know the difference between good and bad emotions. That's a mind concept. And so we allow ourselves to have all emotions as necessary parts of the human being. And here's where we draw the line, is on the behavior. We know that not all behavior is okay. We have this thing, this intrinsic thing that comes with us, that we know that some behaviors are not conducive to relationships. And so when we're learning about this behavior and emotion differences, again, we're going back to this law of identity and how we discover that a behavior is either beneficial or not beneficial, useful or not useful. And we say it like this: if it is harmful, it's not okay. And I mean, that's really short. If it's harmful, it's not okay. And that's as much as we need. But some of us like a little bit more. We like words, we like understanding, we like to tease it apart. And so then we say harmful to self or others. It's not okay. It's destructive. It's ultimately going to cause problems, not just in the self, but with all relationships that you have. And then some people need a little bit more explanation. And so we can do that too. Harmful to self or others, or the property of self or others. It's just not okay. And so that's where we draw the line. And when we begin to understand the biological necessity for emotions versus behavior, that they are not the same, then we are empowered to change our behavior. We are empowered to choose. Because sometimes if we don't know we have a choice, we don't. You can hear around a lot, you always have a choice, which is absolutely true. Except if you don't know you have a choice, you don't have a choice. It's that simple. And it's really an interesting concept. Like Lama Root, our teacher, used to say, it's a noodle baker. So think about it. If you don't know that you have a choice, then you don't. And you always have a choice. And so again, this mindful self-awareness, aware of how my emotions trigger certain behaviors. If there's a behavior that I don't like that happens all the time, guess what I get to do? I get to change that. And then we'll kind of tie this up with, well, how do we change these negative emotions? Because dang it, they're hard, right? They get a hold of you and eek. Yeah. And it's not, we use anger as the example because it's easy. We've all been angry and it's really powerful and it, pretty destructive. But what about when we feel sadness? And sadness can last for a long time. It's the one that lasts longest. From our half second to our 5 seconds is sadness lasting longest. But there's a beauty behind sadness. The evolutionary purpose of sadness is to draw us together for support, to help us support each other through the hard times. And we all know the physical posture and facial expression of sadness. And just think of the last time that you saw somebody walking with their heart slumped in, their back rounded, their chin tucked, and how do they look at you? Chin tucked, heart collapsed, upper back rounded. That's a little, by the way, that physical posture with the heart dropped way back in there and the upper back rounded like an armadillo is about as far deep as you can go into self-protection mode. And then the chin tucked like this, you are protecting your throat so that you're not going to say anything because what you've said has been invalidated or rejected or told it was stupid. And so sadness, and then someone will look up at you and their eyes look up. And so we know that, and we intrinsically come with a desire to support that person. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Can I help you? Is everything all right? Do you need a hug? It comes intrinsically. Here's the interesting part. Culturally and socially, we have been trained away from our innate desire to care for others because of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me, when I see that, it's one of the saddest things that I experience as a human being. Kind of makes me cry just thinking about it now, because we are so pure and so good in our heart. That's the way we come. There's some really cool studies on little kids, and they do it in a room with play toys and push baskets and things that little kids play with. And you can see over and over and over again, if a little kid falls down or the toy goes away or another kid comes and takes a toy, that an observant little kid, so there's 3 or 4 kids in the room, and if they see a kid fall down, they'll go and help them up. If they're crying, they'll go and soothe. We come with it. And because we get clouded, things happen, we get afraid, we are not living in harmony with the desires of our heart. And so we stop taking care of each other. High school hallways can be really mean places, but they can also be places where kids really shine. And high school hallways are an interesting social observation, right? So back to this idea of intrinsic desires to take care of each other. Please don't let that be covered up in you. Please do what it takes to scrape away the fear, to scrape away the divisiveness in our society, and to really stand in your own heart of truth and love. Ultimately, that's how anybody changes themselves, and then that's how the world changes, is because we see each other and we care for each other. And if we don't, yeesh, we're in a bad state.
Yeah, I hear that. That's something we were talking about before we started recording, was about a little bit about how, well, I'll just add some dimension to it, but during this coronavirus experience, I've seen a lot of, it's why I'm not really on social media, just because I've seen people that I know and I care about just kind of lose it on
Yeah.
each other. And I get it because they're in fear,
Yeah.
right? And I think if anybody with with eyes to see can see that what's coming in is just a lot of fear. It's coming in from every angle. And if you're watching the news and you're reading the newspaper, and even before the coronavirus, I mean, Molly, this is something you and I have like trained in about like caring, excuse me, caring about the information that comes in to our
Yeah.
system and how it's important to be aware. So yes, maybe there is a virus that's happening. That's fine. But is it something that you need to pay attention to 24 hours a day if that is cultivating fear in your system, knowing what we just talked about with like how it diminishes that I don't is the word compassion, that innate compassion we have for connecting with each other. And like for me, when I was watching all that bitterness, I shut down. Like I
Yep.
said, okay, I can't be here. It's toxic for me. So I just removed the piece that was causing me. No, I didn't have fear, but I was having resistance. Like something was not right in me. It wasn't in alignment, so to speak. I'm It's shifted now. It's funny, I'm back on because of the summit and I'm like, oh, it's like a whole new world. It's like much lighter. Like people must have had a real transformation. Or
Yeah.
I don't know, other people unfriended each other. I don't know. It's like a different world. But you could see it, like you were saying, as a social experiment, like the hallway for the teenagers, and then like Facebook for for just
Yeah.
every
Everybody.
right?
But Julie, I think it's really easy to get sucked in to that negative aspect of social media. I kind of disconnected too there for a while. And again, we have a choice of how we respond, right? We can so easily, and there's some really great recent books out there about how social media is turning everyone into assholes, you know. Um, and it can be such a useful tool, but again, it's how we choose to engage. And if I choose to get fired up by everything I read that doesn't agree with my perspective, or when things don't go my way, then I'm choosing destructive. And it's outwardly destructive, but more importantly, it's destroying my capacity to take perspective. It's destroying my capacity to understand differences. It's destroying my capacity to understand that every single individual is an entire universe, because I get sucked into the drama. And so I can choose. If I get totally sucked in and can't say anything nice, then I don't say anything at all and I disengage I turn it off. I delete the app from my phone. If I can choose to post positive, then I create a totally different environment on social media. I create a climate of positivity. And so again, with this positive experiment that I just did, I kind of saw the same thing, Julie. When I got back on, there was a big transformation, and it felt a lot more positive. And then I thought, okay, why? I think a huge part of it was I decided to kind of cull some of the pages that I followed. And then I decided consciously to spread positivity,
Mhm.
because I know that when I spread positivity, it not only makes me feel good, but I get a lot of good responses. So I know that it encourages others to have a different mindset, have a different perspective on being positive. And then when you were talking about fear just a moment ago, I do want to capture something that I think is really, well, I think it's important, but even more than important, I think it's extremely beneficial for us to know as human beings, is that fear will dominate you.
Mhm.
Fear is kind of this insidious little invader that clings and grows. Anger tends to be really explosive and we have big anger, but then it subsides, it's kind of like a volcano. Big explosion, but then it's quiet for a while. But fear, is this thing that just keeps growing, and it stays in there, it lurks in your psyche, and it's corrosive. It is extremely corrosive, not only to hope, to your hope that things will be better, it's corrosive to your immune system. It's one of the fastest ways to weaken your biological immune system. And so if you let fear dominate you, then there's a really, really, really good chance that your biology is not going to be strong. Your immune system is not going to be strong, and you're not going to be able to fight off the little cooties that come into you. And so, man, if anybody out there just feels like you need a little immune booster, get over your fear. Don't let it dominate you. Turn off the things that create fear in you. Again, you choose. That's the beauty of this whole thing. It's called locus of control. This is a great concept from the field of psychology. So imagine a bullseye, a target, one in the middle, one more ring, and then one outer ring. The outer ring is the things you can't control, like the outcome of the election, or who gets coronavirus, or when the vaccine is ready, or should there even be a vaccine, right? All those outer things that are beyond your control. The next ring in, the one in the middle, is what you can influence. What you can influence. So it might be your friends and neighbors. It might be how you can influence through your positive shares on social media. But ultimately, are you controlling that? No. There's a possibility that you can influence. And then the middle ring, the bullseye, that's where you want to focus. That's you. That's your self-responsibility. That is the only place that you actually have control, is right there in the heart of yourself. You get to choose what you allow in. Before there was social media, it was music. Do you remember your mom, right? She'd be like, why are you listening to that song? Those lyrics are so horrible. And you're like, oh, I like the beat, right? But your mother knew that those lyrics were really weak, right? But now it's nobody cares about music and lyrics, right? It's the social media. You choose. You are the filter. If it upsets you, if it creates fear in you, if it makes you angry, turn it off. Delete that page. It's not worth the harmonious peace in your heart. No social media, no social media, no news is worth your peace of mind and your peace of heart. So choose wisely.
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness. So what is it with uh the way that the way that you teach children, or the way you're teaching teachers to teach children, is that any different than the way, an adult learns, or is it very similar?
Well, it's a little of both, Julie. It's similar um, in that we're all human beings. We all have these emotional experiences. We all have language. We all have perception. We all have relationships. So much of it is similar. And what I'm teaching works for anybody because it's it's human nature. I mean, it's what happens for every person. So it's applicable to every person. It's not just for kids. It's not just for teenagers. It's not just for teachers. It's for every single person who walks the planet, because it is what goes on in our interior world. It's our emotions, it's our responses, it's our continual self narrative, it's our dialogue that we have with ourselves in the morning when we get up and brush our teeth and, oh, fuck, this day's going to be so bad. I have to do this, that, and the other thing. And so you end up brushing your teeth really, really, really hard and scrubbing your gums because your day is going to suck so bad. But then on the days when you wake up, it's going to be really great. Quick brushing the teeth, out for coffee with your family. And so it's applicable to every person. Here's the difference that I have observed. I'm not saying this is true across the board, but in my experience, kids are much more receptive because they're not jaded yet.
Mm.
A couple have had big, deep romantic relationships, and that have not worked out. And so they have been hurt in that way. But across the board, it's a small percentage. of students compared to adults in the real world who have been um, dumped or betrayed or a relationship hasn't worked out. And so when we have um, kind of a teenagers versus adult world, adults are much more jaded. They've had much more experience in life. They've seen meanness and hurt and betrayal at different levels of intensity. And so I think for a lot of adults, kind of opening up that door into my emotional reality can be a scary thing. And with teenagers, they're like, yeah, why do I get angry? I know I got teenage hormones going on and my mom never listens to me, blah, 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 but what else is going on? So they're much more curious, I think, just naturally. But what I would offer to anybody who's not a teenager that's listening to this is approach it with the attitude of a brand new beginner. Approach it from that seat of, well, I don't know. And it can be a tricky thing in our society, especially to say, I don't know. Um, that's not something that most of us are comfortable with. I don't know. But really, ultimately, what do we know? I mean, right? We probably, I think I heard it this way once. You don't know what you don't know. There is so much more out there than we will ever be able to know about life, the universe, life, the universe, and everything. I think the answer was 42. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? We just don't know. And so if we can approach ourselves with that idea of, well, I don't know everything, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're a dumb boy or a dumb girl, or you're not smart enough, or you don't study enough. It's just a natural part of being a human being. I don't know. I don't know what's in there. I don't know what I might uncover. And that's a good thing too. There's so many little hidden gems in this whole exploration of human emotions. I don't know what's in there. Maybe there is a field of diamonds covered by your anger. And once you get through that anger and you purify the energy of that anger, it turns in to unshakable wisdom. This clear, absolute mirror-like wisdom. Is that the phrase, Julie? Right? That you don't know if your anger is hiding exquisite truth. And so, be like a teenager, be curious, don't be afraid to explore. Don't let fear dominate you. You know who said that? Many people probably are not going to like this. It was President Donald Trump. After I think it was either right after he came out of Walter Reed when he was diagnosed with coronavirus. And, in just a couple of days, he was back on his feet and out there. And I listened to him. That's our president, and he's got coronavirus. So what's he got to say about that? And he said, and this is why, this is wisdom. Don't let fear dominate you. I mean, no matter what you think about Donald Trump as the president or the man, you have to allow that those words are wise. Don't let fear dominate you in any aspect, especially when going into your self-awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of what? Yeah. So be brave, be courageous. There's a gold mine in your own heart.
Actually, that's a really good point, bringing up Donald Trump and that chunk of wisdom, because it always goes back to the personal responsibility, right?
Mhm.
So if you're being responsible for yourself and you're not judging others, right? Which is like a major thing to overcome, is judgment on others, then
Mhm.
you are receptive to wisdom in however and from whomever and from whatever way it needs to come in. Whether it's somebody that you don't like very much, their actions, and for whatever reason. But if you just have that judgment on that thing, being a person, or mostly a person, right? Then the wisdom can come. because it's yours. It doesn't need to, we're only responsible for ourselves, but this is a perfect example of how our judgment can like cloud us from seeing what needs to be seen, because that was just a perfect example of that. Because
Yeah, that
that's true wisdom, and it could have come from anybody,
anybody.
but it's this object of like so much, like so
Judge.
many people's judgment.
Yeah, I really like the way that you said that, Julie. That judgment, it just clouds. It clouds us. It actually blocks us from being available to information. And that information may contain the exact nugget of truth that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So release judgment. Release judgment of yourself. I mean, yes, we have to discern. Again, we can go back to this idea of behavior. We have to discern behaviors that are beneficial and not beneficial. And so we have our little law of identity, right? Let's identify behaviors that are harmful or not okay. So there has to be a certain level of discernment. But to just throw out a judgment because it doesn't align with my exact belief, or whatever reasons we judge, right? And we're not always judging outwardly. A lot of times we judge the self. Get over it. I mean, that might sound kind of harsh, and it might not be taken as super compassionate, but ultimately it is, because our deepest compassion removes ignorance. And if we're judging, we're ignorant because we block knowledge that could possibly set us free.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes our compassion has to take on a little bit of courageous backbone. Stop judging. Stop judging yourself. Stop thinking that things aren't enough. Stop thinking that somebody's bad just because they have a belief that's different than your belief. Guess what? There's enough space. There's enough space for all of us. There's enough room that we can all have our own beliefs. We can all have our own worldview. We can all have our own sense of self, because there's enough space. There's enough room. And our judgment, there's so much, Julie, we could keep going. Judgment and negative emotions narrow us on purpose, by design, so that we stay alive. And so when we judge, we're putting ourselves in a survival mechanism. And when we're in survival, guess who's first? Me and mine. And so judgment and negative emotions and negative behaviors, they keep us really, really narrow. And there is your cap on consciousness. If you want to talk about a cap on consciousness, it's judgment and it's negative emotions. And so if you want to be free, if you want your consciousness to expand, if you want to, I don't know, there's a lot of room. So you decide, it's up to you, right? You choose. If you want to achieve enlightenment in this very lifetime, if you want to achieve the unity, if you want the light, then you have got to get over your narrow perspective, because that is your cap on consciousness, and it is not doing you any favors. If you want to experience the great peace, prosperity, and harmony, you have to be able to create an environment where that can actually happen. And that's through a really, really broad mindset. And that mindset, self-responsibility, is what it comes right down to. I am self-responsible. No one is coming, and I can't save anybody else either. The very best I can do is make myself happy. I mean, here's why it matters. I'll end on this, Julie, because this is the funnest thing ever, because kids always want to know why, right? Especially teenagers. Why are we studying this? Right? Why? Because happy people are nice. Happy people. And we're not talking about happy because of a new pair of shoes, right? We're talking about the big flood of positive emotional experiences that draw us together, that move us into our unique genius, that move us to want to be engaged and play and have a sense of playfulness about life. Gratitude, number one on the list. Joy, experiences of hope, awe, wonder, pride, and love. They're all subsumed under the great big umbrella of love, right? all those, and you can look up the research of Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, all of these positive emotions build a repertoire of internal resources to cope with the sticky situations of life. And they they build and broaden. They build this repertoire and they broaden our perspective. They remove the cap on consciousness. And that's why we need to be happy and joyful and content and grateful and loving and compassionate, is because those positive emotions make us nice. And we all want to be around nice people. We all want to be supported. We all want to be loved. Happy people are nice, and nice people are happy. And that's why it matters. That's why it matters. We're not mean to our friends.
Nice people are safe,
Yeah.
and that's part of that fight or flight, we're all seeking that safety,
Oh, yeah.
and that's what I've found in my journey through the emotional um, experience is that I have come from a place where people didn't feel safe with me. And it was
Mm,
all emotional, right? Because
yeah.
I had the number one anger issues.
Mm.
And as I unraveled that anger and went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper through the storylines of beliefs, I have become a nicer person. And now I've noticed, hopefully, I mean, I have noticed. I even ask some people. They feel safe with me, and I think that was like that makes me happy actually, because my I could feel when I was not making people feel safe, but I couldn't like I didn't know back then I didn't have a choice because I had to go through a process,
Yeah.
obviously, because I did. Um, but yeah, so that's an interesting point. And I think at the core, everybody, right? And they want to feel safe and loved and supported.
Yeah.
And yet I know I'm not going to get that unless I'm giving that, because then I'm just going to be on edge and in turn not giving that. So I won't be attracting it.
Yeah.
Oof.
You got to give out to the world what you would like to get back. Yeah.
Do
Love.
unto others.
That's right. And it's, we can laugh about the kind of the hippie nature of love, peace, and joy and that kind of stuff. And then we can kind of get serious about the golden rule, do unto others. But it's real.
It's
I mean, if
real.
we just stop and look, if we have any excuse me, any brains in our head and eyes in our head, we see, if we just stop and mindfully aware. And that process, Julie, we all have the process. We all have the process of becoming.
Mhm.
And when we start to see uh, people out there feeling safe or people responding sweetly, those are big indications that our process is working. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming from love and respect and honor. That's what we started the conversation
Oh,
with
yeah.
that remedy, the controversy, remedy, and honor. That's at
Yeah.
the core of what we are as, men and women and children and beings in
Yeah.
these bodies.
Yeah.
That's our true nature. If there is a controversy, we're here to make remedy through honor, because it reminds me of the namaste, right?
Oh,
My soul honors your soul. The essence that I am honors the essence that is you. And we're coming together as peers, not as an authority in any hierarchy. And that's honor.
yeah. I love that. I think it's, gosh, it's so easy to not know in this day and age, to just not know, or to turn a blind eye to, that we're all the same, and as you mentioned, this honor is just being able to see each other on the same level. And I really like this equanimity with a capital E that teaches us that we are all the same. We all suffer and we all do not want to.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you have to, to be able to stand on a level playing field with somebody, you have to come down to that equanimity, capital E, that we both suffer and neither of us want to. And if you stand in front of any person on the planet, anybody in any country, anywhere, you're going to be able to look at each other in the eye and say, I don't want to suffer. I just want to be happy. And they're going to say the exact same thing right back to you. And if we can understand that, then that's a huge step in the right direction of creating that, what you call it earlier, Julie, the paradigm shift, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to suffer. So you say to yourself, those of you watching right now, is it true? This statement for you, I don't want to suffer. Is that true? And then say this one to yourself and determine if it's true. I just want to be happy. Is that true? And there we are. Right there. My heart is just exploding right now. It's the truth of human nature. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Julie, you're the best. Yeah.
Oh, you are the best. Thank you so much for coming on. It was
Oh, my
just
pleasure.
so great. I really needed to hear that. I love hearing the emotion in that, about the emotion that way. It's very
Yeah.
grounding. I had said that to you when we first started talking today about how grounding your energy is. It must
Uh,
be all that time you had in the classroom.
yeah, you don't really get ruffled after 15 years, Yeah, it's good. So yeah, Julie, just a reminder to anybody who's listening, again, the book, The Art of Emotional Resilience, keep your eye out for it in early 2021. And then my website will be up hopefully mid-December. We're working on just a few more things, and I don't really like the name of the website. I got to tell you that, but it's what it is. So mollydahlspeaks.com.
Oh, no, that's really good.
Okay.
I know. It's hard using our names. I don't know. That was my issue. Was there already another Molly Dahl?
Yeah, surprisingly, there is another Molly Dahl on the planet. And so mine is not mollydahl.com, mollydahlspeaks.com.
I love it because you're a great speaker
I
and
think
you have so much to say in such a great way. So I think it's perfect.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Well, thanks for the work that you're doing. It's really super timely and necessary, and it's so beautiful. I've just caught just a couple of the speakers so far, and man, I got pages of notes already. So, thank you for doing the work that you're doing, Julie.
Yeah, this is my great joy, to be able to bring something like this into the world. And it was supposed to be at a different time, and then things shifted, and see, it's divine timing because I can really feel the timing of it is perfect.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you.
thank you.